Good evening, friends. I welcome you to another episode of Becoming a Knowledge Worker. How are you all doing? So, as we go about this session, I want it to be very interactive. So, keep putting your comments. Please keep asking your questions on the chat, on the comments, on whatever platform you're watching. Uh, Becoming a knowledge worker is a session that we do with some of the most successful people on planet. We do this session for all of you who are in the first quarter of their life. I bring some of the most successful CEOs, chairmen, to talk to you about how have they made their career, because you must learn from the very best. You must learn from the CEOs. You must learn from the successful people of the world. So, in this becoming a knowledge worker, I want all of you to be very interactive. I want all of you to ask a lot of questions and try to make the best of this opportunity. Today, in the eighth show of Becoming a Knowledge Worker, I am breaking the tradition by bringing in a non banker. Yes, as TKWs, Institute of Banking and Finance, we have always had CEOs, chairmen, presidents of banks, financial institutions, etc. But knowledge workers are everywhere. And this learning is not limited only to the students of TKW's IBF. This learning is important for everyone. And hence, from now on, I will bring to you the greatest knowledge workers from all spheres of life. Today, our guest is a person who was born in Pakistan, who spent his childhood in Shimla in Punjab, started teenage years in Delhi, but became an adolescent in the US. He's a thought leader on India, a newspaper columnist, renowned author, and former CEO of P&G India. Join me in welcoming Gurcharan Das. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Uh, He's a son of a government engineer. Mr. Das graduated from Harvard in 1959 before joining Vicks Vaporub in India as a management trainee. And wow, he grew all the way up to the position of MD. Later on, he became the first Indian CEO of P&G India, MD of P&G Worldwide, and decided to take an early retirement at the age of 50 to become an author, a dream life. Last 30 years as an author, he wrote a very successful trilogy of three books about three aims of life: difficulty of being good, India Unbound, and Kama, the riddle of desire. And today, while we were preparing for this session, he just shared with me that the fourth in the trilogy is about to come. I would not spoil the surprise by talking about it. So, a very warm welcome, sir, on behalf of TKW's IBF students, alumni, players, and all our viewers.
Thank you.
So, sir, I want to intentionally keep your childhood and teenage years for a discussion later. Okay, but first, I want to talk about your experience of 1960s and 70s. That's a time you were working from being a management trainee to the MD of Wix. So nowadays, people with finance, marketing background become CEOs. But you joined Wix as a psychology graduate and still became the MD. So how did you make that possible?
Well, first of all, let me correct a few small things.
Sure.
It was a philosophy. I did philosophy at Harvard as an undergraduate. And also, I started at Harvard in 1959, but I graduated in 1963.
Okay.
And I was supposed to go on to do a PhD in philosophy at Oxford. But at the last minute, I got cold feet and I asked myself, did I want to spend the rest of my life at that stratosphere of abstract thought? No. So I did not go to Oxford. I refused that scholarship. And then my mother had her worst nightmare proven true. She had an unemployed son at home. And so to calm her down, I applied in the news, from the newspapers, in the wanted ads, the first job that I found. And it was a company that made Vicks Vapora. And so that's how I started my business career.
So, and then you started as a trainee. But how did
That's
you
right.
grow to become the MD without studying business?
Well, business is a matter of common sense, to be very honest. And they were very successful businessmen before they were MBAs. So, and my inspiration to go into business, came from a story uh, from the 12th century. Um, 12th century's collection of stories from Kashmir called Katha Sarit Sagara. It's in Sanskrit. Believe it or not, I also studied Sanskrit at Harvard when I was an undergraduate. And again, much to my mother's deep concern that she would have an unemployed son. And so I didn't tell her that I also studied Sanskrit. Anyway, that story inspired me to try my hand. I wanted a life of action rather than a life of thought. And of course, I ended up by combining those two because I also became a weekend writer as a and and so while I wore two hats right through my business career, a Monday to Friday hat, which was a corporate executive, and a Saturday Sunday hat, a weekend writer of a weekend writer. Anyway, my point is that if you want, I can tell this story because you have young people, and
Yeah, we'll be very happy.
many of them are dream of creating a startup, and this is a story of a startup.
Wow.
And we live in an age of startups. So let me begin with that story. It's a story of a 17-year-old boy who just has was finished his school, and he's poor. His mother cleans houses for a living and to bring him up. But when he's 17, she says, "Now, son, you are not going to do what I did. You have a destiny." And so she says to him that go to that house over there. The richest man in our town lives there, and he's supposed to be a kind man, and ask him for advice on how to get started. So the next morning, the boy goes to the rich man's house, and while he's waiting for this man to come out, he sees a dead mouse in his courtyard, आंगन में चूहा मरा हुआ. And so the rich man comes out, and this boy, he asks, says, "Now, what?" The rich man says, "What can I do for you?" And the boy says, "Can I have this mouse?" And the rich man laughs. He says, "You're doing me a favor by taking this mouse away. People come to me to borrow money, to ask for this or that. And what else can I give you?" And the boy says, "Nothing else. Just let me take the mouse." So he takes this mouse, and he knows there's a widow with a cat in his neighborhood. And for a few paisa, he sells the mouse as cat food to this widow. And the few paisa he takes, and he goes to the bazaar and buys chana, spicy chana, and he makes pudiyas of this chana, and he goes in the afternoon water with a ghada of water, and he goes and sits in the town square because he knows that in the afternoon loggers come from the forest with carrying logs of wood, and they put their boj, on the ground there. And at that time, he gives them all water, pani, and he gives them chana, chana. And they're so happy, but they don't have money. So each of them gives him a log of wood. And the next day, he sells a log, gets more chana, better chana, more spicy chana, and he makes again those pudiyas and does the same thing. And he does this for the next 3 months. And then the rains come. When the monsoon comes, logging stops in the forest. And so the price of timber shoots up in the market. And this boy has a house full of logs at this time. So he starts unloading his logs of wood a little bit at a time. And by the end of the season, he has made enough money to buy a shop in the timber market. And so he sets himself up as a timber trader. He has one competitive advantage over the other loggers, and that is that the loggers know him because he was the one who befriended them with chana and water. And so they all go to him, and he gets the best prices, he gets the best stock, and in a few years, he's become the most successful merchant in the timber market. But he realizes the margin in selling timber is small, but there's more money to be made in converting the wood to a ship. So he finds a master carpenter, shipbuilder, and he makes him his partner and he finances him, and they start making ships. And in a few years, he has become a very successful ship making business. So again, a few years go by, and he realizes there's actually more money to be made in shipping cargo, shipping passengers, than in selling ships. So he gets another retired captain of a shipping line, and he makes him his partner. He finances the enterprise, and in a couple of years, he has become the richest man in town. So then he goes to that old man, the rich merchant, and no, before that, he goes to a jeweler and asks the jeweler to make him a gold mouse, a 24 karat gold mouse. And he takes this gold mouse to that rich merchant, and he presents it to him, and he says, "This is your return on venture capital, because I started with a dead mouse." And he says, and the old man is so happy to hear this story of a startup that he gives his daughter in marriage to this boy.
Does he have a name?
Well, I don't know. I don't think he has a name in the story. I read it some time ago, but in my collection that I have edited for Penguin,
Mm-hmm.
in 13 with 14 volumes, it's called The Story of Indian Business. And in that, The Mouse Merchant is volume number 4.
Okay.
And it's been written, translated from the Sanskrit by Arshia Satar, a well-known scholar. And I have written a long introduction, and I have talked about this boy as a most inspiring story of a startup that I ever read.
There are
And
so many
imagine,
stories.
1,000 years old.
Yeah, that's what. There are so many such stories about Indian startups and businesses that actually we are not aware of. I mean, we've only read case studies of American businesses becoming big. but the real inspiration probably lies in our Indian history.
Well, I hope it inspires few other people, because after a degree in philosophy, it made inspired me to go into a world of business.
Right. So, sir, coming back to that, I think in the very beginning of your business, you or job, which probably you considered as your own business, uh, you started selling. I read about you trying to sell wigs to doctors and the
Pharmacy.
representatives.
Yeah.
Now, an engineer's son, a lawyer's grandson, were you prepared for selling, and did your family take it well that okay, you're going to sell, do sales, because it
Well,
wasn't considered by the that days.
I was always an oddball. In fact, as a child, my mother's wrote a diary every day, and she went to Connect College in Lahore. And in that diary, I was born in Lailpur, by the way. Lailpur, which has now disappeared because the name was changed to Faisalabad by the Pakistanis. And the reason they changed the name, by the way, of the town is because King Faisal of Saudi Arabia gave Pakistan a lot of money, and it was a bribe in to make the Pakistanis accept Wahhabism, which is an extreme form of Islam. And so the Pakistanis allowed Wahhabism to be taught in madrasas, and they also turned more and more fundamentalist. Anyway, as a reward, the Pakistani changed the name of Lailpur, which was named after to Faisalabad. But Lailpur actually was named after John Lyle, who was the lieutenant governor of Pakistan. Of At that time, it was undivided India. By the way, he was a lieutenant governor of Punjab, and it was around the turn of the century that it came up, this town. And the only thing I know about John Lyle is that he always put the words BA after his name, John Lyle BA. And once his PA forgot to put BA, and he got a he got words from John Lyle. Anyway, so I was born in Lailpur, and my mother records in her diary the first reference to me is that this that he is a restless baby. This is when I was soon after I was born. I was a restless baby, according to her. Then, by the age of 2, she has changed me from a difficult child. I was a difficult child. I caused a lot of difficulties. I used to break things all the time. And, uh, and then by the age of 4, I have become a troublemaker. And so you see, this pattern has followed all through my life. And I can say only this, that I had two influences in my life. I'm going to answer your question, but going back to my childhood, because it explains a lot of things. So when I was uh, 4 years old, my father, who worked as an engineer for the government, canal engineer, he was posted to Lahore, which was the state capital, and he couldn't find a house. And that's why we were living in Lailpur. And so finally, he got a house. And at the age of 4.5, I put into a kindergarten, and we lived in Model Town in Lahore. And everybody in class, in our kindergarten class, had a pencil box. You know those 2 anna rupee? There were 2 annas it used to cost for a pencil box. So there was a kid who sat next to me. His name was Ayan. He was a Muslim boy. He was very poor. And he had no pencil box. And he used to borrow my pencils. And I didn't like that. And then there was a boy who was sat in front of me. He was the richest kid in our class, the only one who came in a car. He was dropped in a car to the kindergarten. We all walked to school. And so the rich kid had two pencil boxes, and one of them was imported from England, a red, shiny pencil box. So one day at recess, when everybody was out of the class, the teacher, the students, I took the rich kid's pencil box, extra pencil box, and put it on the desk of Ian, who had no pencil box. And then after the class, everybody came back and there was a scream. The rich kid said, "Who stole my pencil box?" So that because he was rich, the teacher was afraid. And so she said everybody had to stand up, and she went around asking, well, who took this boy's pencil box? And when it came Ian's turn, he, she pointed to the pencil box on his desk and he said, there's a pencil box here, but I didn't put it here. And then it came my turn. And the honest thing would have been to tell honest truth that I had put it there. But I was frozen. Temporary insanity. I didn't know what to say. I must have been scared. And so I kept quiet. And poor Ian was taken to the front of the class. And just before he's punished by the teacher, he looked at me and he says, "You know, I didn't do it. Tell them." And I kept quiet. And this incident has remained forever in my memory, never forgotten. And it was the same temporary insanity, which this is, by the way, this happened in March 1947. And in August, we had the partition. And we had another temporary insanity which gripped Punjab when people started killing each other. And the only way I can connect is the same thing that happened to me as happened to Punjab. Lunacy. The world had gone crazy. So the the point though I'm making is that I had two influences in my family. When I finished kindergarten, I came home with a report card. And did that report card, my mother, because I was smiling, my mother asked, she's at the door, standing, I'm coming in, smiling with a report card. And she says, "Did you stand first?" And my father is standing behind her. And he says, "That was the wrong question. Ask him what he likes about school. Ask him who are his friends. What is he learning? And ask him everything, but don't ask him whether he stood first." And so my mother was concerned with making a life. Sorry, my mother was concerned with making a living. She wanted me to stand first. She wanted me to study hard, get into a good school, get into a good college, get a good job. That's what all mothers do, right? But my father was different. My father was more relaxed, and he was always interested. He was always telling me, yes, you have to make a living, but you also have to make a life. So, making a life versus making a living became a, a sort of two parallel quests that existed from the age of 4 onwards. So, when I got a scholarship to Harvard at, when I was 17, and the advice of my mother was, make sure you study something useful. And this was at Palam Airport. And she has tears in her eyes because I'm going away. And she says, you have to make a living when you come back. You need the job. So she says, why don't you be like your father? Become an engineer. So when I arrive at Harvard, um, they tell me, they ask you what your major. I wrote engineering. And my tutor says, son, there's another school down the river called MIT. You'll get a better engineering degree from MIT. Anyway, within a week, my mother's advice went haywire because it went out the window because I saw the course catalog at Harvard and it blew my mind. So I was studying, took a course in Greek tragedy. I took a course in the Russian novel. I took a course in Renaissance painting. I took a course in Sanskrit love poetry. I took a course in architecture, in Bauhaus architecture. I mean, I studied everything. And finally, even Harvard got worried because in my third year, they said, now you have to declare a major and take enough courses to graduate in that major. So I declared philosophy. And my mother was convinced I would never be able to get a job when I made that decision. Anyway, so I graduated in philosophy. And that's where I was telling you the story earlier of how I switched. I didn't go on to do a PhD in philosophy, but I became a salesman of Vicks, selling Vicks Vapor Rub from shop to shop, from drugstore to pharmacy and to the wholesale market. And so I went from the ivy covered halls of Harvard in that high, I was a high Brahmin who became a low Banya within a few, within a few weeks. And, uh, and it was, well, I had been transformed before also because,
Mhm.
until the age of 3, my name was Ashok Kumar.
Yeah.
And my grandmother suspected that my mother gave me that name because she thought my mother was secretly in love with a Bollywood actor named Ashok Kumar. So that was not right. So she took me to a guru. She placed me at his feet and she said, Guruji, enu na dio, e munde nu na dio. And so he saw me at his feet and he said, let's call him Gurcharan Das. So at the age of 3, I was transformed from Ashok Kumar, the Prince of Happiness, to the humble servant of the feet of the Guru. And many years later, I asked the Guru, I said, why did you give me that name? And the Guru said, humility is good for everyone. But he had the best definition of humility that he gave me. He said, humility means to, to, to what did he say? Uh, to take your work seriously, but not yourself seriously. To take your work seriously, but not yourself seriously. That is the best definition of humility. And frankly, it is qualities like humility, attitudes, determination that make the difference between great leaders and ordinary managers.
So, sir, I one thing reinforced just now to me that all great leaders are amazing storytellers. You know, the way you have put across each and every message supported with a story is just awesome. And I think that was the secret to you becoming the MD of Vicks Vaporub and P&G. Uh, Now, I'm writing a chapter in a book, where I am trying to debate that today parents are raising kids with industrial age values, you know, to survive in the knowledge age. So basically the values of the parents are still industrial age, Marx law, first I and AI, those sort of things, whereas the kids are expected to succeed in knowledge age. You seem to be an embodiment of what I call a knowledge worker. I say you have to be a knowledge acquirer, knowledge sharer, and leverage that knowledge, and you seem to be doing all of that: reading, sharing with books, doing a lot of speaking, and made a successful career out of that. Uh, do you think there is any importance, significance of knowledge in today's society, and parents need to change those values?
Well, in one respect, India has an advantage that we are a Brahminical culture, which means that we value knowledge. In fact, I feel the the great what I feel sad about is that after the reforms, India has risen, but we still have not created an industrial revolution, and that means we have not created the jobs that come with an industrial revolution. We, I mean, the first 40 years, frankly, were a disaster for our country. Disaster meaning, no, I mean, disaster economically. Politically, socially, I think it was wonderful. I mean, we owe Nehru a lot. He he instituted the institutions of democracy, etc. in us. He kept the country stable as one country, so we owe him a lot. But he was a disaster as an economic thinker. Nehruvian socialism ended up becoming a license Raj, a command economy, and it was an absolute disaster. you know it's only after 91 that we got it. And so I will answer your question in a minute, but let me tell you, uh, most people in India, most of your viewers of this program, they have not experienced what it was the way I experienced the license Raj. And I'll give you another story that one year there was a flu in the country, and my company, we sold lot of, I was the head of marketing by then. We sold a lot of Vicks, and we were celebrating because we had made record profits in the eyes of our in the eyes of our I mean our parent company. We were heroes. But that day when we were celebrating, a summons arrives from Delhi, from the government, saying we have broken the law. And the law was that we had exceeded our production license. We had license for only so many tons of vapor up. That's why it's called license Raj. Because, and there was a 3-year jail sentence at the discretion, of course, of the government, which was so we were afraid somebody would have to go to jail. And so I was sent to Delhi, and the officer in the ministry who who summoned me, uh, was a very arrogant man, very anti-business. He hated foreign companies. He thought East India Company was an example, and he didn't like what us at all. So first he kept me waiting for 2 hours in his office, outside his office. Then he calls us in, and he's reading the paper, and I'm there with two lawyers, and the lawyers are shivering, and even I'm scared. कि क्या होगा अब? And so he's reading his newspaper, and puts down his paper and says, "Kya?" And I said, "You have called us." He says, "Yeah, kya, kis baat hai, kya baat hai?" And so I tell him that, look, there was a flu, and we were doing our duty. We were keeping the shelves stocked of the pharmacies and drugstores with Vicks VapoRub, and we helped the people of the country, the children especially, during this flu, during this pandemic. And he heard me, and then he said, "ठीक है, uh, but we want to make an example of people like you who break the law, and so now the law will take its own course. आप जाइए." And he says, "जाओ जाओ." And so, I mean, I was scared, never been so scared in my life. And as I'm going out of the office, I turned around at the door and looked at him. I don't know what got into me. And I said, "Sir, what if this news were to get out that you have sent an executive of a multinational company to jail because he produced for the country during a pandemic, helping millions of children? How do you think it will look to the world? What if the news appears in New York Times, Washington Post? After all, we are an American multinational company. The news will get out." And he said, "Are you threatening me?" I said, "No. I'm just telling you that the news will come out." He says, "Are you going to leak the news?" "I don't have to leak it," I said. "It will get out. You send somebody to jail. Don't you think it'll be a story?" Anyway, we went out, and the lawyer said to me, "Why did you have ye phanda kyun le rahe ho? Why are you taking this on? You should have begged for mercy." And anyway, I had sleepless nights after that, but the government quietly dropped the inquiry. I think some sensible person must have realized कि ये क्या करने वाले हैं हम.
Right, right.
So what I was trying to tell you is that the first 40 years, we didn't get our we didn't get our freedom in 1947.
Mm.
We got it in 1991. And that is what my book, India Unbound, is all about. That freedom, that azadi came to us only. And we sacrificed two generations in terms of the poverty did not go down. The rate of growth was 3%, but the population rate was also 2.2. So that was what we mourned and groaned and called it the Hindu rate of growth. Of course, it's nothing to do with Hindu. It's all about a socialist economy's rate of growth, this perverse thing.
So, sir,
Anyway,
this
in
happened when
91,
you were MD.
hmm?
This incident is from when you were the MD of the company, the
Yeah,
Vicks
yeah,
Vaporub.
that's
Uh,
right.
but in the journey from of becoming an MD, it would have been very necessary to gain visibility,
Yeah.
branding of yourself. What did you do to become that MD, get noticed
Well,
about?
I answered your question. I said that businessman is common sense. Business is common sense. And the mouse merchant never got an MBA, did he? So that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not against MBA. In fact, after the company decided to make me the head of the company in India, I was 37 years old at that time. They realized that I'd never gone to business school. So they quickly enrolled me in the AMP, Advanced Management Program at Harvard Business School. And it was a summer program. So I spent 2 summers doing this program. And frankly, I learned a few things, but mostly I feel business is common sense. And if you have common sense, you'll be all right. The success in business comes not only from knowledge or even skills, it comes from attitude. Attitude. And so I and I learned this lesson from uh, a person in my own company who came. He was metric pass. He came from a village in Maharashtra. His name was Kamble, and he started as a security guard in the night shift of the company. He didn't know English, but within months, he had a childlike curiosity. So his first day on the job, he sees a coffee making machine and he starts making coffee. But then he starts serving it to everybody on his rounds while he's making coffee and serving it. And next day he discovers the telex machine. And the telex machine, he doesn't know English, but he loves the telex machine. So he takes courses in English during the daytime because it's a night shift job. He learns English. And after a few months, he starts sending messages on telex. He learns switchboard. We had in those days those kind of switchboards. You put the wires into the thing, and he learns to answer the phone. And so this guy had qualities that were amazing, not just his love for technology and all, but overall his human qualities. When he was always, anyone in the evening shift, people said that if you need anything, you ask Kamble. And sure enough, Kamble would go and do it and get it done. So I could talk to you for a lot about Kamble. I know time is running out, but I'll just say, so I'll give you one last example of Kamble, that went to the personnel manager because our telephone operator during the day was going on maternity leave. She was going to have a baby. And so Kamble goes to him and says, look, make me your temporary telephone operator until she comes back. And then, because I'm tired of working on the night shift. And the personnel guy says, are you crazy? You can't speak English. We are a multinational company. We get calls from around the world. And how will you do the job? So poor Kamble goes away. But I heard through the grapevine that Kamble had asked for this job. So I told the personnel guy, because he had created such a reputation in the evening shift that people preferred to work in the evening shift than the day shift in our office. And so I said, give him a chance, yeah, and have somebody ready, a backup in case he doesn't work out. So ठीक है. So within 2 days, Kamble is become the telephone operator. And I get a call from our lawyers, Mr. Shah. And Mr. R. A. Shah of Crawford Bailey says that, he said, Gurcharan, have you got a new EPBX system? I said, why? He says, my phones are answered on the second ring. Before I had to wait fifth ring, sixth ring, etc. But I get through immediately. I said, our only PBX system is Kamble. So that evening, as I was going home, I stopped at the telephone booth, and I asked Kamle. I said, Kamle, why do you answer the phone so quickly? And he says, it may be a customer on the other side, and I don't want you to lose an order. My God, what a what a great answer. I don't think our head of marketing could have given such a good answer.
Right.
Anyway, that's what Kamble was like. And also, he was one of those persons who didn't care who got the credit. He did his job, and he didn't actually, he preferred to be in the background. But to end the story, I'll tell you, this guy rose and rose in the company, and he did it. He retired as a director of the
Oh,
company.
wow. That's
So that's
remarkable.
what I'm trying to tell you, that
Right.
there are people. Then what did Kamble have? It wasn't knowledge, it wasn't MBA, it was determination. He was hungry, and he was hungry. He would have paid us to come to work.
So that means if we keep learning, and make learning a lifestyle, then we can actually achieve anything irrespective of our qualifications.
Exactly. And also, all companies make one mistake. When they interview people, to hire people, they hire them, they ask them what they know, what they hire them about their skills. Well, you're hiring top of the class at IIM from IIM Ahmedabad. And why are you asking him what he knows? He knows everything. You ask him about his attitude. Attitude is more important than knowledge or skills. That's
True.
what makes a great leader in business. And that's what Kamble was.
Right. So, sir, we will have to end in maximum 12 more minutes. And I want to ask two more questions before taking one or two audience questions. Uh, One is you're a great commentator on India. You've written so much about it. What is your view on the great Indian obsession of getting into government jobs?
Well, I think that shows the failure of our country. That I remember I told you that we did not create an industrial revolution. You cannot take the surplus people from the farms, from agriculture, to give them higher productivity jobs. Everybody from a farmer's son cannot become an IT engineer. So, therefore, if you had an industrial revolution like all other countries, even China, latest example, but Japan, Korea, Taiwan, all the Asian tigers, they did it through the export of labor intensive manufacturers. And
Right.
that has been India's failure. And that's why jobs are not there. And that's why government jobs have this obsession, because at least in a government job, you are secure. Kaam karo ya na karo, you cannot be fired. So,
Right.
so that is the problem. And unless now in the future we create an industrial revolution, we will not achieve the ambition for our and don't blame Modi. It's all our governments after 91 who have we should manufacturing should have been 30% of GDP. It's only 15% of GDP. Simple.
Make in India is a good step in that direction.
No, it should be make in India for the world.
Right. Right.
That's how it should be. So PLI scheme should reward exports, not just manufacturing.
Right.
You have to, our exports are less than 2% of
Mm.
global exports. We have
Correct.
16% of the world's population, and our exports are less than 2%.
Mm.
That's the failure.
Another question, sir. What did you mostly get scolded for from your parents?
Well, I was always getting into trouble.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, I mean, like, look, here, I was studying Sanskrit at Harvard. My mother would have had a heart attack. Where's this boy going to be get a job? So I think they got used to me, and I was
So that
lucky.
you hid from her. She
Huh?
never came to know. That you hid from her.
Well, found out in the end. But and that's why I had to get a job with Vicks Vapor Up quickly.
Right.
Otherwise, she had a unemployed son at home.
Sure. So we have a lot of questions. We'll pick up some. One question that I have is from Ayush Deshwal. He's asking, what is the hardest part in your journey to become CEO? So, what was the most difficult part?
Well, I can tell you, in my case, when the first day I joined the company, uh, I was accused by my boss of asking too many questions. My boss wanted me to memorize everything, memorize the price of all the sizes of wicks, memorize the timetable of the railway train, and memorize the phone number of our stockist in Surat. And I said, I can look it up. I said, the price list is there. Why should I memorize? The man said, this boy is a troublemaker. He doesn't follow discipline. He asks too many questions. So that was, I guess, the difficult part. I
In
was
fact,
sad.
I believe people, schools, institutions should teach asking questions as a curriculum. That's my strong belief.
Yes, that's right.
We have another question from Ashok Mittal. He's asking, is there a regret you have about something which went wrong in your professional career? Maybe missing that Oxford PhD or anything else?
Well, I guess the regret uh, is there are several regrets. Um, One is that I remained a commentator of politics and economics, and I wrote a column in the Times of India regularly for years and years. And the and I was always sad that the reforms were not happening. They were very slow, and nobody was selling the reforms. No politicians are supposed to sell. Margaret Thatcher sold her reforms to the people. And my regret is that I did not go into politics and actually do the reforms. I mean, I tried. I went to the
Never late.
Sonia Gandhi and I tried to meet her, and I said that, look, I want to do something. I met Advani after that, but they had no use for a reformer. And so I never went into politics. But my friends say though that I had a more influence outside of politics because of my writings. Because my writings not only were in the Times of India, but also in the language papers. They used to translate them. The Dainik Bhaskar, Inadu Telugu, Tamil Hindu, Lok Satta in Marathi, Lokmat in Marathi. Uh, and I mean, my columns reach the people and so on. But that's one regret. The other regret is that when I changed from being a businessman to a writer, I
Mhm.
thought I would also become a better human being. And the opposite happened.
Why
That
would you say that?
because writers, you see, I think businessmen are better people than writers because business people depend on others. They depend on their customers, they depend on their suppliers, they depend on their employees, and they have to treat everybody with respect. Employees will run away if you don't treat them with respect. Customers, if you don't, even Ratan Tata bows down to his customer. So businessmen understand dependence, interdependence. And so they naturally learn to behave in a certain way. Writer doesn't need anybody, and they can do whatever they like. And so they become arrogant.
So
So this is
my partner in press loans is also there in this conversation. I think there's a very important message for both of us here. I have a very interesting question from Vivek Kumar. If you were to start your career from zero, which industry will you choose to enter in today's environment now? You can say politics if you want to.
No, no, I don't think I'll go into politics. After seeing all this tamasha in politics, I think it's the last place I'll go. But it's a duty, of good people to enter politics, because one out of three persons in the Lok Sabha and in the Vidhan Sabhas in the states has a criminal record. Can you believe it? And these are not ordinary political cases, rape, murder. So we have criminals in politics today. That's why it's so important for us all to go into. Anyway,
So
I wouldn't
where
go
would
into
you like to
politics,
go?
but I would say today, as you said, is the knowledge age, the knowledge worker. So I would go into the fastest growing industry is going to be AI and robotics and all these
Chat
new
GPT.
technologies. So I guess I would go into that.
Great. So, sir, before we finish, one last thing I want you to advise us is what are the things youngsters should do before the age of 25 so that they have a good career later? What advice would you give?
Well, I think the best advice I can give really is to find your passion, what you like. And, we are not like Mozart, who at the age of 3 knew he was a musical genius. We stumble onto our passion. And so that's why my father's question was to my mother. She said, find out what he likes. Find out what your child. It's the duty of the parents, the duty of teachers to find out what each person likes to do. Because life is short. You have only one life. And in that life, if you are going to spend 8, 10 hours working and you don't like your job, that's terrible. It's a wasted life. So that would be my advice. And don't get obsessed with it. It will come. But have, like I, in my case, I had a two-hatted life. I wore two hats, Monday to Friday hat, Saturday, Sunday. So do something interesting that you like on Saturday. I was lucky. I I started writing. I started writing. And so when I was 50 and I quit the corporate world, I had another career because I had the confidence of 25, 30 years of writing before that.
So, with this closing line, where Mr. Gurcharan Das suggests us that before the age of 25, we must find a passion that we can live our life by. And the book Ikigai, a Japanese science, also believes that if you find your passion, you probably live a very long life. We hope that Mr. Gurcharan Das also spends another 40 years at least on this planet, sharing his wisdom, influencing our minds, and giving us guidance for future through his books and speeches. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us and sharing this wise advice. And I thank all the audience, all the viewers, all the students of TKW's IBF, all the alumni who've been watching this session. If only you could implement a bit of what was being taught here and make sure that you make a learner's life, each one of you will grow up to be a leader in your sphere, and probably we'll have our next speaker from amongst you. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Keep learning till the next session. Thank you. Bye bye.